Recording now. So good morning, everyone. This is Chris Knowles. I'm the Education Coordinator for MISA BC. And on behalf of MISA BC and the MISA BC Executive, it gives me great pleasure this morning to welcome you to our first inaugural webinar in our Municipal Leaders Spotlight Series. This morning, we're very fortunate to have Christina Crabtree, CIO for City of Maple Ridge, presenting. And Christina is a 30-year veteran of the technology industry, having worked in public, private, and university sectors, and has been with the City of Maple Ridge for 12 years. In her current role, she's responsible for all aspects of the city's technology strategy and service delivery. Today, she will be presenting a new project initiative which represents a significant shift in focus and strategy for the municipality. This open government, open data delivery approach exemplifies creativity and innovation and promises anytime, anywhere data to both its staff and citizens. Welcome, Christina. And before Christina starts, we'd like to start right off with a few poll questions to get some feedback from you on where your municipality might be in open government, open data roadmap. Now, Christina, do you want to do those first, or would you like to do your intro first?
Sure, why don't we do the poll first?
Okay, we'll kick off the poll. So you should see a poll come onto your screen right now. Go ahead, there we go. So we got a few questions for you. Are you currently doing open government, open data in one way or another? Is your organization using ESRI? Which is your biggest challenge with open government, open data? And do you see value in this initiative? All right, the results are coming in. We've got 9 of 23 have voted, so we're getting there.
Okay, while people are voting, should I just go ahead?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Good morning, I'm really happy to be here. It's kind of strange. I don't usually do presentations to a camera, so it's a little bit different. My name is Christina Crabtree. I am the Chief Information Officer to the City of Maple Ridge, and very excited about our Open Government Portal initiative. I usually start this presentation out with a little bit of a story. Because there are really not that many times in life when you go down a path for a certain reason, expecting certain outcomes, and you get something you didn't expect, something really valuable, maybe more valuable than when you first started. And so a couple of years ago, I took my 2 sons to Japan, and my eldest son had been recently inspired by Buddhism, and he was reading a book called The Young Samurai, and he was desperate to see all the places that he had read about. And for anyone who knows me, they know that for me, a successful holiday has to have both a historical component and an educational component. So I took them to Japan, but I wanted them to see Hiroshima. And the reason I wanted them to see Hiroshima is I wanted them to see the devastating impacts that the war had on that city, and to understand what happens when war moves from death on the battlefield to having a generational impact. So we went to Japan and we saw the museum, and that was great and really valuable for them. But the lesson that I learned there that I didn't expect to get was that in the resiliency of people. Hiroshima is the most beautiful city we visited in Japan. And that place and the atmosphere of those people was the best we'd ever seen. And I liken that experience to this project because we went down the road of open government to provide information that was more accessible to the public, to engage the public in community issues, and to demonstrate transparency and accountability to the public. But very early on in the project, where we found that the real value, the real gift in this was the internal business value we found with our data, and that managers in our areas, business units, would be able to manage their areas better and find efficiencies through the use of our data. So with that, maybe we'll take a look at the poll and see what your guys' experience have been with open government. And then I'll show you the portal that we have and how we've, our little kind of a different bend that we have on open government.
Okay, so I'm going to end the polling here. We had 17 of 27 responded. So, question number 1, are you currently doing open government, open data in one way or another? We have 75% said yes. Organizations using Esri, 94%. Wow, that's pretty good. Pretty high. And then,
That's great.
yeah. And which of your biggest challenges with open government, open data? 56% both said, 9 of 16, both said data cleanliness and maintenance of data sets. And then 44% said corporate concerns regarding the release of data.
Okay.
And finally, seeing value, yeah, 106% said yes, absolutely. So, so I'll just share the results here. Here you go. Very cool. And great.
Okay.
We'll carry on.
So that's good information to for me to have, because just to set some context, our open government portal is built on the Esri framework. We're using ArcGIS Online, and we're also using an application called the Local Perspective. So I want to walk you through our site and how we've organized things, and then anytime you have any questions, just feel free to type them in, and Chris will let me know if we have questions. So the first thing I wanted you to notice about our site is that it's very clean and modern. You know, we got into the new sort of scrolling site with a beautiful picture. The next thing I wanted to show you is the search. We took a little bit of a different angle on the search. Normally when you search for documents, as you know, you get a mishmash of documents, videos, data, and applications. And we felt that people who are coming to the open government site, because they may know exactly what they're looking for, we wanted to give them the ability to narrow. So for example, if you wanted to know any presentations that I had provided for council or otherwise, you could click on the video and then just search. And that will take us right to our media center, and we'll show you all of the videos that I've made presentations at council. We also launched this site as a beta site, and so we're really interested in questions and feedback. And so we use Survey 123, which is an Esri product, and it allows us to capture any and all feedback that people have about the site. And we've put this thumbs up and thumbs down wherever we could to allow people to give feedback in the moment. The site itself is divided into 3 categories. There's these primal portal pages, a flagship application, and then we have a bunch of infographics. I wanted to talk a little bit about the primal portal pages, because when we went to open government, first we had a task force that was set up by the mayor. And then we set up a citizens representative working group. And the citizens representative working group was comprised of about 18 people from the public. And they took in, they held some public hearings, they took in written submissions, and ultimately they came back with a report with 58 recommendations. And each of those recommendations were very different and specific. And most of those recommendations circled around money and circled around land. And when we stared at these recommendations for long enough, what we realized that no matter what the question is, most people want to know, how does it work? How can they participate? And where can they find the information? And so we designed these primary portal pages with that in mind. So the first one we looked at is city finances. And we would say these 6 items here were the ones that bubble to the top. The one I want to point out first is the property tax. And so what we wanted to do is, we were also told by the Citizens Representative Working Group that some people want a whole bunch of information and some people just want a little bit of information. So we decided that in order to describe how does it work, we would create some activity maps. And those activity maps would have a synopsis at the bottom. So this one I chose is property taxes. And so you can see that, you know, with the property taxes, we start with our budget, and then at the end of the process, you're going to get a bill. This is a bird's eye view of that process, but you may be a person who wants more details. So these activity maps are interactive. So I can choose anything, and I've chosen BC assessment. And it tells me, because a lot of people in our community don't realize that their property values are designated by an outside body. It's not the city that decides what your house is worth. We apply the tax rates, but we don't determine the value. And so this allows you to dig into the detail, gives you a synopsis of what BC assessment does. And it also tells you if you have issue with the price of your house, you need to contact BC assessment before January 31st. We provide them links to the phone numbers, to the email address. here's the documents you need to fill out if you want to do an appeal, and here are the associated videos. So it's a very context specific to each step in the process. We can give you as much or as little detail as you want. And if you wanted to step through this process by clicking next, 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 you can do that, or maybe that's enough. The next thing we wanted to do was to answer that, how do I participate? And even though we answer it all the way along through the how does it work, you may want to have a more global view of how you can participate. And with property taxes, we know the process is the same every year, so we put that into a Gantt chart. You know, first we have BC assessment, we do our budget, we have to calculate our tax rates, and then eventually have a bill. We've also included for all of these flow charts a context-specific schedule, and this allows departments such as finance to be able to put in specific dates that are related to property taxes that they want people to know about. So an example in this one, we don't have anything for February, but when we get to July and people want to pay their property taxes, the office stays open till 9 o'clock every night. So that's the kind of information that would be populated in this particular schedule. The last thing we wanted to do in each one of these flow charts is to provide people with information. And so we went to the subject matter experts and we said, what's the kind of information or what kind of chart or graph would be useful information to people who wanted to know more about property taxes? And so Sylvia said to us, well, I think it would be how our property taxes break down in Maple Ridge. So we use the Microsoft's Power BI, and it allows us to provide a nice little chart. So as you can see from this chart, residential revenue, that's the primary revenue that Maple Ridge gets from its property taxes. But if you wanted to break that down into different categories, business and other and so forth, you can do that, and the chart changes as a result. And we also have the ability to download the data. What we wanted to make sure of, and this is a theme that I'll try to keep reminding you about throughout, is that we wanted to capture the business value and we wanted to tell a story about our data. We didn't want to just throw up as many data sets. It's not about quantity for us, but anytime we've shared any information, we always also allow people to download the data as a result. Finally, in this Where's the Information page, we also wanted to pull together all the documents, the data sets, and the videos that are associated with this particular activity map. So if people wanted to collect all those documents that they'd seen through the process and take a look at them, you can click on the documents. We pass a couple of parameters to put you in the property tax area of our file system. But if you wanted to know all the documents that the city has to offer, you could click on Home, and then you could go to City Documents, and here you would have a list of all the documents that we have to offer. Now, this particular series of documents is located in our document management system. We use Laserfiche, and this is our public portal, and so we just made a link to that. Now, I'm sure most of you guys use the LGMA file system, so it's way more complicated than what you see here. And we also do as well. So we had staff make that translation between the LGMA file system and some user-friendly terms, and we put those into our site to try and make it easier for the public to get access to them or to know what they're looking for. I just wanted to show you quickly one other activity map, just to show you that this activity map thinking can go everything from simple processes to quite complex processes. This is our business planning process. It starts with community input, and of course it ends with the budget. And then it never really ends, because then we have an amended budget, we have amended tax rates, and then we have to do our performance reporting. I wanted to point out that we also have the ability to identify in these boxes whether or not community input is available. And so those three heads denote that. The other thing I wanted to mention on the Where's the Info page is that usually we used a graphic of some kind, a chart that displays numbers, but you could also use this area to put in an application. So we use something here called the Strong Community Framework, and the Strong Community Framework associates our business plan items with community capital. So I've selected physical capital, and this will tell the end user, these are all the projects that have been associated with physical capital. The other thing we do in this section is we also want to highlight some of our little applications. And so if we wanted to be able to show people all of the business plan items that have been associated with the city for any given year, we have a business planning inquiry tool. So if I wanted to see what was slated for information technology in 2017, I can do that. And if I wanted to just look at the file milestones, because as you all know, we plan our business plans, but then there's a whole bunch of stuff we don't plan for. You can slice and dice it that way as well.
Christina,
Yes?
we have a question that has come up. Ryan Reinsch would like to ask, for the Power BI portion, where are you pulling the data from?
So it's pulling from our local site. So the Power BI stuff is on our city's local site.
Okay.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to point out here under the property tax, I had forgotten to mention under the Where's the Info page. This is one place where we found some real internal efficiencies as well as a customer service boost. So in that Where's the Information area, if I go to the property tax estimator, we had Sylvia, who's our tax collector, and she said to us, you know, we spend 60 hours responding to calls because people want to know what their an estimate of their property taxes. There's a big run on these people from January to May every year, and then also throughout the year if somebody buys a house in Maple Ridge and they don't know what the taxes will be. And so she had a spreadsheet, and she would pick up answer the phone call, and she would fill in the number of whatever the value of the house was in that spreadsheet, and she could give that information to the member of the public. Since we had that, it was very easy for somebody in-house to write a little application called the Property Tax Estimator. It defaults to the most common scenarios, but you can change those, and then it gives them the cost of their property taxes at the bottom. So that's been really useful too. It's allowed us to let anyone in the organization, including myself, provide an estimate to a member of the public, and it also puts it in their hands so they can also check on their own estimates anytime. So now we're just going to go back to the main page. And I just wanted to point out really quickly, Maple Ridge is a growing community. And so we have tons of development here. And so land development was another hot topic for us. And so we pulled out everything from subdivision, variance permits, development permits, and so forth. And then we're also just starting something called I Want to Build A. There's a number of people in Maple Ridge that want to do their own renovations, whether it's a basement or a pool or a deck. And so we're adding these activity maps just to help the citizens to be able to do their own work. And so again, it's got the activity map. It follows the same premise as everything else, but it also gives them a checklist of all the documents that they need to supply in order to successfully navigate this process. So I'm just going to go back. To the main page. So that's how our flowcharts work. It primarily answers the question, how does it work? How can I participate? And where can I find the information? All of that information is gathered in context-specific ways, and any associate applications or infographics would also be located in that area. The next thing I wanted to show you was our flagship application, and it's called What's Happening Around Me. And you can click off it right off the main site, and I love this application because it tells you what's happening in relation to where you are. So what you're looking at here, this gray circle, tells me where I'm looking at, and so I put in an address in Maple Ridge, and then on the right-hand side here, this blue box, community events for the next 14 days, tells me what I'm looking at. So there's not a lot of activities, or there's 0 community events that are happening within a kilometer of the address I put in. But if I use this white slider and I pull it out, I can end up finding out where some of the activities are in the next 15 days, some of these community events. And so when I select one, I get the Coles Notes version of this event, which I just love. It tells me when it's happening, how much it costs. It tells me a little bit about the event. If the event itself, if they have their own promotional website with all of the details and contests and everything else that they're doing, then you can select it here. And if you have your own event that you want to add, you can add this in by clicking Add Your Event, and then that will be added to our community calendar. Now, we've had this Add Your Event service. We use Civic Plus for our website. We've had this Add Your Event service for a long time, but it was a bit buried in our website. And so I really like this What's Happening Around Me. And this uses Esri's local perspective application. And we just really rebranded it and used it in a different way than people were using it before. But it gives you the ability to put this stuff right front and center so it's easy for people to find.
All right, well, we're getting some questions. You got some excitement happening here now. Our very own membership chair, Jesse Hudiak, is asking, are each of the pages you're showing built using Arc Online Open Data Tool, or are you just using that for the main page?
So for our main website, it's built through ArcGIS Online. Some of the infographics, so when I was going through those activity maps, those are actually located on site here. And so we had to pull out of ArcGIS Online for those ones. And then this particular application that you're looking at right now is using what's called the local perspective, which is the Esri application. It's a built-in application, and we've just pumped in our data, and we're just using it a little bit differently than people have before, but this is pretty much out of the box. We've had to make a few minor adjustments, but nothing major. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. I think it answers Adam's too. He was asking pretty much the same thing about ArcGIS Online. And Roman Frank has, how is this information for this tool pulled into this GUI? Which components are you using? I guess you probably answered that one as well.
Okay. So we pull data, yeah, well, I think so. I'll just expand on this a little bit by saying that we pull data from all of our systems, including our FDM system, from Amanda, from Tempest, from GIS, and Civic Plus, which is our website for their calendars. We pull that data from all different sources and then present it through this application and the other applications on our site. So the next one I wanted to show you was road closure alerts, and I love this one as well because it just gives me a synopsis of any road closures that are happening right now or going to happen in the next day or two. So if you're in a commuting community, which we are, it tells me when the road closure is happening, why it's happening, and when it begins and ends. And then if I want all the information, and we keep going back to that theme, do I want just a little bit of information, or do I want to be able to dig into the details? Well, then I can go straight to the website and get that information. The next one is the parks. So all of our parks are in here, and this park, Cliff Park and Falls, is the most beautiful park, I think, in Maple Ridge. And when you select the park on the point on the map, it tells you what the address of the park is. It also tells you the amenities. So, you know, you might be going, I want to play a game of tennis. I don't know if the park up the street has a tennis court or if there is one close by. And this allows you to be able to see very easily what amenities are located at that park. And also, you can use this application as a launch pad to go on to our full-blown application. So again, you'll be able to go into that more detail. And I think this is one of the ways that we've enhanced the local perspective is by putting in links, which allows you to launch off and to get more detail somewhere else. So pretty much, I would say 80% of what we have to offer on this site is all accessible through this, what's happening around the application. They also have this cute little car, so you can get directions specifically to that particular park if you want to, which I think is fun. Lots of people use Google Maps, but you'd have to go out of that application and into another one, and so this is very convenient. The next one is the bike routes. Now, we added the bike routes in response to the public feedback because we're absolutely desperate for public feedback, and whenever we get things through this thumbs up and thumbs down icon, we try to act on it. So we got some information from the public saying, you know, not everybody drives a car, so they wanted us to add in our bike routes, which we've done more recently. The next one is the businesses, and I like this one. I love them all, actually, but this one I really like because it allows me, if I live in an area, where's the closest coffee shop? Is there a car shop close by? Or if I'm planning to move to the neighborhood, maybe I have young kids and I want to know if there's a daycare within walking distance. So I can select the points on the map. Again, I can get the information about the daycare, about the childcare center. I know if this business is showing up in this application. We show the license number, so every application or every business that shows up in here is a legitimate licensed business in Maple Ridge. I think that would give people comfort. And also, there's no promoting of one business over another. So all of the businesses that are shown in our application, of course, everybody has the same level of promotion. I wanted to show you this launchpad idea. And so if you'll notice, there's the Coles Notes version of the business. But if I want to know about all the businesses in Maple Ridge, I can choose the business finder. And that will take us to our full-blown applications. And we're in the process right now of trying to skin all of our applications to look the same. And we're kind of in a transition period right now. But this shows me all of the businesses laid out on a map that Maple Ridge has to offer. And, you know, in some communities, they have pub crawls, but in Maple Ridge, we more have like sushi crawls. And so if I type in sushi for the keyword, now I can have a mapped out of all the sushi restaurants that are in Maple Ridge. So if you wanted to do something fun and do some kind of mapping thing like a sushi crawl, you'd be able to very easily get the information and then do something with it. Oops, I don't remember where I'm going. So that's the businesses. The next one is the active development applications. Now, Maple Ridge is a growing community, and we have tons of applications, and it always makes me sad when I look at this one because there's so many tree cutting permits. But anyway, I wanted to show you this application because I think this is by far the model that we're moving towards, and one of the best applications that we have, and it's called the Land Development Viewer. So again, I see all the active developments on the map. I can select one. It gives me the Coles Notes version of what that is. It tells me the status. It's at third reading. It gives me the file number, where it is, what kind of work is proposed. But also, it allows me to launch off to another application, which is called the Land Development Application Viewer. And the Land Development Application Viewer gives me that same information. It tells me, oh, this is a rezoning application. It's at a status of third reading. But this is where we're able to connect the council conversations with the documents or reports that they are putting out there. So I can select a council meeting, and this application will take me to the exact place in the council meeting where that conversation took place, which I think is super amazing. And then the next thing is, it also connects me to all the reports that are associated and have gone to council as well, all that documentation. Now, when we load it first, it loads up as a web link. But if you want to download the whole document and actually read the report that has been submitted at the time that conversation took place, you can click on the bookmarks, and then you get straight to that particular application and all the information that's associated, and you know what the staff recommendation is. The next one of these that we wanted to show you is a service request. So if you had a burnt out street light at the end of your street and you wanted to know if that had been put in the queue, you can take a look at this application, and I can see at the end of this street here, there's no new service request there. So if I select a service request, you can see what the request is. It also gives you the details, but it also allows you to add a new request. So you can use the service request form, and then you would be able to fill in your request online, and then you would very easily be able to, you know, then that's in the queue now. So you don't have to wait till the next morning or, oops, I'm getting lost as to where I am. I've got so many tabs here. So then you get it right into the queue. The other thing I wanted to show you is that this is another place where you can launch off and get more information. So if I use the service request viewer, here's another application that plots out on the map all the service requests that we have. And what we're going to do, I think I mentioned this already, is we're going to try to skin these applications so they all look the same. And each of them will have the get the data icon. And when you select the get the data menu item, you have two choices. One, you can just download the raw data and do whatever you want with it, or you can choose to have a summary. And this is where we try to continue to leverage some of the business value, because we find that our staff are using these things as well. But it also tells a story to the citizens of what's going on around here. So here are all of the service requests for the city of Maple Ridge. And if I wanted to look at how many were done in 2017, I can do that. So there's 6,190 in 2017. And if I wanted to take a look at the work that was being done, you can see that there's just a ton of different categories of work that these guys are responsible for. And so usually what I do is I choose the potholes. And you can see from this that there's 279 potholes that were requested to be fixed, and then how many of those were closed, and there's 261 of those 270 are closed now. You'll notice that every time I make a change, you can see the data changing on the bottom, and you also have the ability to download everything and do your own thing with it.
Awesome. We got a couple more questions for you
Okay.
if now's a good
Yeah.
time to throw those
Yeah.
in. And you have a lot of sophistication here, obviously. There's a lot of integration with a number of systems. And as you say, you can almost get lost as to where one ends and the other one begins. But Adam asks, is this essentially, and I'm guessing that's why you asked the question about Esri, but it's essentially your public-facing web map platform that is kind of at the heart of all of these applications.
Yes, I mean, I would say that the whole mapping piece and this local perspective application really pulls everything together. I mean, you could go through the site and not look at this map and just look at the charts and the graphs and the activity maps. But yeah, I would say this is our big flagship application. And Esri, the ArcGIS Online, is our open government portal platform.
Okay, and Lori Smith asks, there seems to be significant input into each area to ensure that documents, videos, data, etc. are current and accurate. Did you have to change many procedures internally to ensure that the site is up to date?
So that's a good question, because some of the things, the feedback that I've got from some of my colleagues is that, you know, they wouldn't want to, they aren't able to do this kind of thing at this time because their data isn't clean enough. And my answer to that always is neither was ours. And so when we started down this process, we did have processes in place through Amanda. So when you finish one step in the process in terms of a rezoning, for example, and you that will be a trigger in Amanda. You close one process and the next one opens up. But we found that people were a little bit farther behind on their filing, if you want to call it that, or keeping things up to date. So certainly there's been more attention paid to keeping things up to date, but not an actual process change per se. The other thing that we noticed, the more that we have this in front of our staff, because they use this public-facing portal for their own internal needs as well, they clean it up as they go along because they notice things. It's always in their face. And so we didn't actually change anything drastically before we started, but we certainly realized that it being in the public makes people more mindful to keep it up to date. And also because it's in their face, it's just easier. The other thing I would say that we crowdsource clean up as well, because I've had a couple of calls from the public saying, you know, my video is not showing up on my land development. And that causes us to go back, find out why. And usually it's a typo or something in the bookmarking, and then we can fix those things. So we talked a little bit about having this crowdsource way of keeping our data clean, because people notice things about their own applications or their own businesses, and then they want us to make sure that they're right. So that's been super helpful for us.
The transparency is actually leading to better processes on your end too.
Yeah, it's making things better.
Couple more questions. Roman Frank asks, as a municipality, are you using this data and information technology for planning? And if so, will you be describing this for us during this session?
So I think what you mean by that in terms of planning is business planning and those kinds of things. And that is our next evolution. So we are right now pushing internally people to focus more on data-driven decision-making. And that's been something that we've been working on since before we actually launched this portal in October. But it's something that we're getting real momentum on. And so one great example is, you know, we have our dog park data. And so somebody created a map with the dog parks and little paws for the dog parks. And there's only 4 in Maple Ridge. And it's very easy to see that because we have all the dog licensing information, it would make a lot of sense for us to look at where people live who own dogs, because that would make sense to put the next dog park near them. So absolutely, that's the direction that we're heading in. People are doing it now to a certain degree. They certainly rely on it for a number of different business reasons, but we want to get more and more of that as we go along. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that's great. David Pulver has a question, and it kind of touches on something that maybe a few people are wondering about, which is the components of this being affordable versus do you feel that the citizens are getting enough value out of this level of detail to make the setup worth it and the effort worth it?
So that is something that we launched on October 17th. And so that is something that we're evaluating right now. One of the things that's really nice about the Esri product is we actually already owned Esri. So for us, the ARC GIS Online was already included. The local perspective application was already included. And once we got the setup and the data in there, adding more data sets and so forth is not that taxing. We don't do any additional data input. There's been no extra data input as a result of setting the system up. We're just pulling it from different areas. And because we know that there's internal business value for making our own decisions, for making sure we have all the information, for keeping people up to date if they have to go back to council, then it gives us more time to determine whether or not the public are using it and how much they're using it. And that's really why our focus, the reason why I'm so passionate about the whole open government thing is because what I found is the enormous internal business value. So even, even if we don't have a huge uptake of citizens using this on a regular basis, we've already got internal business value out of it, and that, adds to its value. So far, we've had a lot of positive feedback from the citizens. We have about 92 hits a day, I think, to this site at this time. And we're just hoping to ramp that up by adding more services and being more responsive to what people want.
Great. Adam asks, roughly how long has the project been in the works before it launched? And how many internal technical resources do you have working on this platform?
So we, the actual process of getting buy-in from council for being able to do this project is what took the most amount of time. We had the task force that was set up, then we had a citizens representative working group, and a year went by the time we actually got a report back from the citizens representative working group. And then we had to work through how we were going to set it up. Sell it to council by showing them examples of some of the applications and where we were headed. And then we were able, and then to get the budget. But the actual time we started building the site in April of 2017, and we launched on October 17th of 2017. So it took barely over 6 months in order to put this all together. That included writing the internal applications. Some of the applications that you launch off to and what's happening around me preceded the Open Government Portal, but some of them were written for it, the Property Tax Estimator, the Land Development Application Viewer, the Business Finder, all of those ones. And so it really only took about 6 months, and our core group is about 8 people, which includes myself. So we have, 4 real technical people on the IT side, and then we had somebody from Parks and Rec that actually was responsible for producing the catalog, the spring and summer catalog for the Leisure Center, and we pulled her in. She designed the outside of the site. And then we did a little bit of consulting with Esri to help us build the site, but it wasn't very much at all. So it was amazing how much we were able to achieve in such a short time. It's a very sustainable approach.
That's great. And that's it for questions for now. So if you want to carry on with the presentation, that's awesome.
So this is still on the What's Happening Around Me application, and this gives me the recycling pickup areas. So, if I'm new to the community, I might not know when my recycling day is, or if I want to house sit for somebody and they live in a different part of town than me, then it's real easy for me to find this information. We also have the emergency incidents, and we did the emergency incidents in aggregate in order to protect privacy. So for example, if I select any one of these areas, so I'll select number 1, you can see that there's a synopsis of, so in East Maple Ridge, there was just 1 vehicle rescue. If I went somewhere else that had a few more incidents, I could go to Albion, and you'll see there's 6 alarms, 2 structure fires, and some vehicle rescues. So it gives you all of the information about the emergency incidents. And then finally, property crime. I think most people have a crime map, and we also do as well. But this just gives you, again, the same thing. You can see the points on the map when these things happened. It gives you the a small level of detail about the file number, when it happened, and so forth. But this is what I love, is we're able to submit a link to Crime Stoppers. So it just kind of pulls everything together. So it makes it super easy for anyone to use this application and then launch off and do things like notify people of another crime or go to a full-blown application. We also have all of our building permits online. And so if you are wondering if your neighbor has a permit for something that they're doing, or if you want to know the status of your own permit, you can select, I'll just zoom out a little bit so this is bigger. You can select a point on the map. I will tell you this is electrical permit and with the address and what stage in the process it is. So this one is issued. It also gives you a link to the building permit inquiry tool. And this is another application we built as a result of this project. And what's great about this is it allows you to look about specific building permits. So if you were wanting to know if the city itself, does the city itself even get its own permits? I'll put in our address, so that's 1195 Haney Place. And if I wanted to look just for 2017, I can see these are all of the permits that have been issued to the city of Maple Ridge in 2017. And the last one is the weather, and so that's not very exciting, but that's my cue to know that I've gone through them all. And so now I'm just going to take us back to that main site. And so we went through the primary portal pages, which was all the activity maps. This is the flagship application, What's Happening Around Me, which allows you to put in whatever address you want or geolocate yourself. This application, this What's Happening Around Me, is also a mobile app, and it looks nice, very nice, scales nicely onto a mobile devices. And so again, you can do that, just geolocate yourself. Our site gives us the ability to feature certain applications. These are our full-blown application. And then the last thing I wanted to show you is the infographics. And I love this because this is where we really leveraged quite heavily the Power BI. And so we have a whole bunch of Power BI reports that we've created and that tell a good story about what's going on at the city of Maple Ridge. And the first one is the contract registry. Now, when we first put out our contract registry, it was a tabular application, not very engaging. This one is really cool because it divides up all of the, so these are all of the contracts that each of the departments in the city is engaged in over $20,000. It breaks it down by expenses and revenues, but if you only wanted to see the revenue, you could choose revenue and it will change the map on the fly. And so these are all the ways in which these departments are bringing in money to the city. If you wanted to know how much information and what we were spending it on in the information technology department, you can do that. And so I've selected us, and then if I scroll down, you can see these are the contracts that we're engaged in and the lengths of those contracts. But it also tells you about the purchasing process that was used for that particular, those particular contracts. The next one I wanted to show is kind of a cool one, and this is our emergency incidents. And I'm sure this is the same in your community. The lion's share of emergency incidents for the fire department are on medical emergencies. And so this is just a different way of representing. They didn't like the pie chart because they thought it attributed value to each one of those areas and that this was a better way of representing it. And again, you can select the different items on the graphic and it will give you just the information about those particular incidents. You can also choose by year, because if you want to know what happened in 2017, and it tells you how many incidents of each type. Another one of the maps that we kind of think is cool is the capital planning budget summary. Now this is one that we're going to move to have even more internal value, and it's kind of in the same spirit as that land development application viewer. And what this allows you to do is it shows you all of the capital money, how it's divvied up by department, and if you select a department, it will just localize on the projects that are specific to that particular department, which is great. You can also download the data, which is cool. But what we want to do is we want to connect things like the business planning presentations or council conversations in relation to particular capital projects. So you can imagine if we had buildings that were going to be built, and we would be able to plot those out on a map, or roads that were going to be modified or paved or whatever. And then you could select the item on the map, and then you would be able to connect to the council videos that were associated with that capital project, plus you would be able to look at the reports that are associated, plus you would be able to connect it with the capital monies here. So we think that will really be something that people will be interested in. There's also the loan authorization bylaw. So we went, had an process to go out to see whether or not we could borrow money for some projects. And we thought this would be useful for people to be able to come in and understand how much money was being proposed to be borrowed on these specific projects. And the Power BI just gives you so many different options. Like in this case, we just wanted to try to do something a little bit more fun with the data. So, you know, the bigger the word, the more of that type of business that you have in town. And so it allows you to slice and dice and organize things differently this way as well. So I don't know if anybody has any more questions on our infographics or Power BI or any other questions. That was mostly what I wanted to show you. I wanted to highlight for us where we think we differentiate ourselves in terms of the whole open government thing is to really try to pay attention to finding the internal business value for everything that we do. And that way, once we get some internal business value, and we've been able to achieve that in lots of different ways with the applications that we have, then we just share the data as a result.
Yeah, it's incredible, and what a great job presenting, Christina. It's truly an amazing project. Roman asks, how widely known and used are these amazing tools you're using to share this information?
Well, we've been trying really hard to get the word out. I've done a few presentations on the framework at some of the Smart Cities initiatives and other places to try to let people know about it. We also have done a fair amount of canvassing within our community. We're just about to kick off another promotion, an open government promotion, where a whole organization will be involved to try to make sure that everybody at the front counters, front facing, will be able to tell citizens how to use it. And we're trying to get people to take every opportunity when they're asked a question by the public to be able to feed them this link or show them how the tool works so that they'll be able to use it more. So
oh, that's great.
Kind of working on that.
A couple more questions. From an anonymous attendee, were the applications such as Land Development Viewer built using ArcGIS Online Extension or built from scratch internally?
So the Land Development Application Viewer and the Business Finder and the Property Tax Estimator and the Business Planning tools were all built internally. Land Development Viewer and the Property Tax Estimator, the Business Finder, Park Finder, Crime Map, all those were built internally from scratch. Things like the Business Planning Development tool were built using Power BI. And really the only application that we built with the extension was the Local Perspective template. I mean, David uses the Esri tools in order to build his applications from scratch, but he does build them from scratch. And I have another question that says, what Power BI licensing do you use? So right now with Power BI, we're allowed to share those infographics with the public, and anybody can use them, and there's not a huge additional licensing cost for that. But in order for people internally to use the tools and to navigate and to ask questions and to build their own reports, we have to give them licensed versions. We're also using another application internally called Lumera, which is something from SAP, because we're heavily leveraged in SAP. And so we are using for some of our internal applications, which look exactly the same as the external ones, but they provide additional information that would be protected by privacy. We want to add some of this additional information because it helps the managers manage their areas better, because they need to know the staff. How long does it take to do each one? Which staff were involved? We have HR dashboards that look at things like, what's your overtime? How much did you spend? How much leave balances do you have left? Those kinds of things. And so, we're using the SAP tool internally for that. Some people want to know how accurate or how current the data is. And right now we are offering 24 hours. So we refresh every night at midnight. So depending on what time you look at it last, it could be up to 24 hours every day.
Great. Well, it looks like this is definitely changing and shaping the way the city of Maple Ridge is doing business, I would guess, because as you're rolling out initiatives, you're going to have this in mind as you move forward, as it being a huge tool to leverage that.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Christina. And oh, we have one more question here. Do you know if there are any other integrations other than Power BI for visualization or analytics?
So there are a number of them. Where we felt, because we don't have as much money as other municipalities, the Power BI gave us a very inexpensive option. There is Tableau, there is ClickSense, there's also SAP and some of their tools. And those can be very expensive if you want to house your own server. And where we know that the internal reports will have information that we need to protect, and therefore we can't have it on some external server in God knows where. So, and if you want to have your own server for things like ClickSense and Tableau, the numbers get drive up pretty high. And so we use Power BI for the public facing because it was inexpensive. I mean, one of the things we really paid attention to throughout this project, we were given a budget of $250,000 in order to do the open government. But because we already had Esri, and it was David really that came to me and said, 90% of or 80% of what you want to do in this site, we can do with what we have already with ArcGIS Online. And then the rest of it we can jam in and, be creative and figure out how to make it work. For example, this search here, what are you searching for, was not something that we could be accommodated on the ArcGIS Online, and so David built it, and people get redirected in order to do this search that's more, more narrowing search. Same with our activity maps; those come back to us. But that saved us a lot of money. Having somebody internally do the design on the website meant we didn't have to hire website designers, and then using Esri's consultation, which we did, I don't know how many hours we did with them, maybe 20 or 30 hours. That allowed us to, to get all the stuff in. So it's been very good and really kept the cost down in that way.
Terrific. Well, I think that brings us to our conclusion, and we'd really like to thank everybody, the attendees, for joining us for this inaugural webinar. Christina, thank you so much for bringing the value here. I hope everybody enjoyed it. We are soliciting input from our membership to put on these. We'd like to be doing a series of these over the next 12 months, and invite you to please email me at educationcoordinator@misa.bc.ca and send me a proposal for if you would like to participate in one of these and share the value that you've got as a municipality. That would be fantastic. So thanks again, Christina, and thanks. We did record this, so we're going to be uploading it to our MISA website as well, and that's great. Hope you all enjoyed it.
Good. Thank you.
Thanks. Take care. Bye.